When you think about the state of Indiana, what comes to mind? Probably corn, flatland, and maybe college basketball? Probably the last thing that you'd expect Indiana to have is a beautiful shore that you can get to by train, right? I mean, this is the state that banned light rail in its capital after all. Surprisingly though, you can actually experience both of these things in this state. So let's check out the South Shore Line, America's last interurban railway. The South Shore Line began its construction all the way back nearly 125 years ago in 1901. This construction was undertaken by the Chicago and Indiana Air Line. This railway was soon merged and reformed into the Chicago, Lakeshore, and South Bend Railway midway through the construction of the line in 1904. Be prepared to hear about a lot of bankruptcies and mergers. With construction being completed on July 1st, 1908. The line, however, only ran between the cities of South Bend, Indiana, and the ever so slightly confusing name of Michigan City, Indiana. The very next year, however, the Chicago, Lakeshore, and South Bend Railroad would begin leasing trackage on the Kensington and Eastern Railroad, allowing for trains to at least run into the city of Chicago. However, it wouldn't be until 1912 when Kensington would be connected by rail to downtown Chicago thanks to the Illinois Central Railroad. These interurban trains would run themselves to Kensington on their own overhead wires, but would need to be pulled into downtown Chicago by Illinois Central steam locomotives as the Illinois Central had not electrified their trackage. The line would operate this way until 1925, when it fell into bankruptcy and was acquired by the Chicago, South Shore, and South Bend Railway. The new ownership sought to modernize and improve the service that was provided on this corridor. This included an overhaul of signaling, new ballast and ties for the track, but most importantly, the line changed its power system to match the newly electrified Illinois Central's direct current overhead power. This was massive for operations, as it meant South Shore trains no longer had to be pulled by Illinois Central locomotives or power cars to get into downtown Chicago. The railroad during the years around World War II would flourish due to the freight side of the business moving wartime materials between the industrial hubs around the southern end of Lake Michigan. But in the following decades, the railroad would once again fall on hard times due to deindustrialization and the rise of automobiles and the construction of highways in northwest Indiana. And while it did all it could by doing things like removing street running sections of the railroad to decrease travel times, by 1967 the Chicago South Shore and South Bend was acquired by the C&O Railroad. This was conveniently right around the time where many railroads across the US were handing off their passenger service to Amtrak. However, they were one of the few railroads that actually refused to hand over passenger service to Amtrak. They were legally obligated to keep the service running for a few more years. However, 5 years later in 1976, the railroad petitioned to abandon passenger service. But the state of Indiana actually got a say in the matter, and so in 1977, the state of Indiana formed the Northern Indiana Commuter Transportation District to subsidize operations on the South Shore Line. These subsidies would be short-lived, as in 1989 and 1990, the NITCD took over service and acquired the tracks along the South Shore Line. The freight service that used this corridor was then taken over by this long, similar-sounding name to every other railroad that used this trackage had. The NITCD then got to work to reorganize this beautiful mess that was the South Shore Corridor. Multiple small flag stops along the line were closed, and the terminus in South Bend was moved from downtown to the airport. The NITCD also began a project in the 2000s of replacing the overhead wires along the route, which had some sections that were using the exact same wire from when the line was originally switched to direct current power back in the 20s. The NITCD also acquired some newer rolling stock throughout the 90s and 2000s, as before that, the South Shore Line had actually been using interurbans from Pullman and Standard Steel that were built in the 1920s. But that brings us to today. So what's it like riding the South Shore Line? The South Shore Line runs from east to west, starting in the city of South Bend at the South Bend International Airport. From here, the line has a flag stop at Hudson Lake before it enters Michigan City, Indiana, with its first stop in Michigan City being at Carroll Avenue. This is also where the South Shore Line has all of its maintenance yards. Following its stop at Carroll Avenue, it then stops at 11th Street, which is more the downtown station of Michigan City. From here, the line heads west, passing Beverly Shores, Dune Park, Portage/Ogden Dunes, Miller, Gary Metro Center, Gary Chicago Airport, East Chicago, and Hammond. After Hammond, the line crosses into the state of Illinois and stops at Hegwish. Following this stop, the line then enters the former Illinois Central, now the Metro Electric Corridor, and runs north, stopping at 63rd Street, 57th Street, McCormick Place, Museum Campus 11th Street, Van Buren Street, and finally finishing the long 90-mile journey at Millennium Station. The South Shore Line runs on weekdays from 4 a.m. to 2 a.m. and from 5:30 a.m. to 2 a.m. on weekends. Trains, however, do cross between the Central and Eastern time zone between Michigan City and South Bend. As well as this, some trains do have different origin and termination points along the line. With this mix of different runs, each station varies when it comes to frequency of service, but the line does have 30 round trips between different points along the line on weekdays, 6 of which make the whole journey on weekdays, and 11 round trips on the weekends, 5 of which make the whole journey. The South Shore Line, like many other commuter railways, has a zone-based pricing scheme for ticketing. With 11 fare zones, a one-way ticket can cost you anywhere from $3.75 to $14.25. The South Shore Line also includes reduced fare tickets for those who qualify, and bundled tickets, including 10-ride tickets, 25-ride tickets, and monthly passes. One thing to note as well is the South Shore Line does not allow riders to ride between 63rd Street and Millennium Station, and encourages riders to utilize Metro Electric for that service instead. And if you're transferring from Metro to the South Shore Line, you're gonna need to buy separate tickets, as the Metro day passes do not apply to the South Shore Line. But you know what won't make you buy separate tickets for Metro and the South Shore Line? My Patreon. Because for just $1 a month, you can get extra videos, early access to videos, your name in the credits, and more. The link is down below. But let's take a look at the rolling stock of the South Shore Line. While the South Shore Line had quite the diverse fleet of interurban trains from the 1920s, the South Shore Line currently utilizes 2 different models of trains, both manufactured by the Nippon Sharyo Company. First, there are the older, single-level electric multiple units built throughout the 80s and 90s when the NITCD first took over the railway. They also operate bi-level Highliner 2s, which are used by Metro along their electric lines. They also acquired their first Highliner 2s from Metro Electric in 2006, and received orders for their own Highliners in 2009, and there's good reason for the South Shore acquiring all of these electric multiple units. The South Shore Line faced plenty of neglect throughout the 20th century, being one of the last surviving interurban railways. However, the leadership over at the NITCD has had some ambitious plans to completely overhaul and modernize the service on the South Shore Line with 3 main goals: to improve speed, to improve frequency, and to expand access into more communities. And there are 3 main projects that the NITCD has planned. The first of these projects was just recently completed in May of 2024. Labeled as the Double-Track Northwest Indiana Plan, this project oversaw the improvement of the existing South Shore Line track between Gary and Michigan City. One of the biggest hurdles to improving service speed and frequency was much of this portion of the route was limited to single-track service. This was especially apparent in Michigan City, with the trains actually running down the middle of the road on 10th and 11th Streets. Not only did this limit speeds of the trains, but it also created a dangerous situation for everyone using the road. By grade separating and double tracking the line, as well as improving the 11th Street station, this has reduced travel times from Chicago to Michigan City by almost half an hour. It's also allowed for 14 more trips to be run daily on this section of the track, and for improved safety along the rail corridor and accessibility for 11th Street station in Michigan City, as this project added high-level boarding to that 11th Street station and now allows for easier wheelchair access into the trains. Another project that the NITCD wants to implement for the South Shore Line to reduce travel times and improve operations would be the South Shore Line Airport Realignment Project. This project would take the terminus of the South Shore Line at South Bend International Airport and relocate it from the east side of the airport to the west. This project would reduce the overall distance the trains have to travel, reduce the amount of curves in this portion of trackage, and get rid of over a dozen grade crossings. Currently, this project is still being studied. What the South Shore Line Shoreline does claim that this project would reduce travel times from South Bend to Chicago to under 90 minutes and improve frequency along the line as well. Well, both of those projects are going to reduce travel times and improve frequency, but I seem to have mentioned something about expanding the network. Well, it's true. The NITCD is in the process of making the South Shore Line more than just one rail line. While it has two official names, both used on official sources, the Westlake Corridor or the Manon Corridor, whatever you like to call it, it really doesn't matter what the new line is called. It's more the fact that it's a huge investment into electrified rail in the state of Indiana. This extension will run south following the stop at Hegwish and run through South Hammond, Munster, and will terminate in the city of Dyer. This 8-mile branch of NITCD service is expected to open sometime in late 2025 to 2026 and will provide new opportunities for those who wish to get to Chicago without having to deal with the hassle of driving. Northwest Indiana has long been living in the shadow of the big city in the state right across the lake, but its ambition from its leadership and riders has been huge to turn what was basically a struggling interurban line that would take almost 3 hours to travel a distance of 90 miles into a plan with a real outcome to turn it into a fast regional rail link to one of America's largest job centers and logistical hubs in under an hour and a half. The South Shore Line still has a very, very long way to go before it can be competitive with the likes of other successful electrified regional rail networks like Caltrain or New Jersey Transit. But the fact that it can achieve these improvements to their service in a state that's so hostile to transit is proof that no matter where you live, you can always help grow your city's transit. With so much history and such a bright future, hopefully the South Shore Line can continue to improve regional connections in the Chicagoland area and make the cities and towns along its route better places to live. But have you ever taken the South Shore Line? What projects would you want to see the NITCD undertake? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I want to thank everybody who helped me make this video. And I especially want to thank Tony Stunts and John Schukites, as well as all of my other patrons for their generous support. Not only do they make videos like this possible, but they also get benefits like early access to videos, extra videos, their name in the credits, and more. And if you want to become a patron, feel free to click the link down below. Also, while you're down there, feel free to check out my socials. I post updates and extra content there as well. And if you made it through that yap session, thank you so much for watching the video. Your support is greatly appreciated. I can't wait for you all to see the next video as well too. I've been working really hard on that one. And as always, I'll see y'all on the next one.